Welcome. You are at the CCC,
where there are no outside issues. My name is Bonnie Violet. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a trans, femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, digital chaplain, person recently celebrating 23 years living with HIV and 14 years of recovery. That's
wow. and I'm Lulu, and my pronouns are he and him, and I am a Black gay man living in San Francisco in Dubois Triangle. I am former Miss Castro Country Club. That means I do drag for fundraisers, and I'm always in search of balance.
And each week we will provide. Each week we will provide and create a brave space where we engage in conversations around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to inspire and hold better spaces for people in recovery.
Right, by tackling topics used to separate us.
Exactly, like mumble jumble.
Right, I know. We've only been doing this for a year.
Exactly, but before we do that, remember to like, share, and comment, and follow us.
Ding that bell.
Ding, ding, ding.
Share it.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. It's like I'm just really happy to be back in the studio.
Yeah, I'm happy to be like sitting next to you.
I know. It's like it seemed like I was avoiding you because.
Yeah, I was trying not to take it personally.
Absolutely. Well, don't.
We had to get rid of Anthony so that we could be together.
Exactly. So we have a guest with us today.
Hi, guest.
Hi, guest. Stu, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name's Stu Fenton, and I am a Gestalt Therapist and a drug and alcohol counsellor. I've spent the last 20 years working in drug rehabs in Australia and Thailand. I work a lot with the LGBTIQ community, mostly in the areas of addiction, alcoholism, sex addiction, love addiction, codependence, grief and loss. Those are my main areas. And currently I'm on my way moving to Germany. I'm currently in Thailand having a holiday, but I'm going to Berlin to study a 2-year master's in social work.
Nice. All of that is right up our alley.
Yeah, totally. Sounds like you're on the right podcast.
So, Stu's like you today. It's like Bonnie's normally the one traveling and phoning in, and so we're like, where in the world is Bonnie?
Stu, whenever you're a guest, you have to like wear your shirt off the shoulder.
I know.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you how you're doing because it's like, I mean, it's like anything you want to report on before we dive into our conversation.
Not anything. I'm good with just like diving right in. I think we should acknowledge that Anthony isn't here.
I know. So Anthony, he went out of the country for a wedding, and he popped in for a little bit before we got started, but his plane was delayed. He thought he was going to be able to kind of sign in from the airport, but no luck.
Yeah, so he's in the Dominican Republic.
Dominicana. Yeah. So it's unfortunate, but it's like, I don't want you guys to think that the three of us are having issues.
We're not. We're really not.
I know. It's like
don't start the rumors.
I know exactly. I spice things up.
Right.
Well, let's dive right in. It's like today's topic is staying sober through breakups, or actually, how is that worded?
Yeah, we titled it "Breakups in Recovery."
Breakups in Recovery, and because we feel like we have someone who is an expert and also suggested the topic. Let's let you get started, Stu, and then we're going to dive in.
Yeah, sure. Well, the reason why I wanted to speak about this topic is because I've been asked to go to the Gay and Sober event in New York for Pride Week. They have every year, as you know, a four-day workshop there. And they asked me if I would run the dating and relationships workshop. So I'm going to co-facilitate that with Sterling Walker from Los Angeles. And we got together and decided, because I've been to a few of these events in the US and Australia, and I was thinking, how can we make our dating and relationships workshop a little different? Because the ones that I normally go to is like what to do on a date and how to deal with things that happen or when you get triggered and stuff. And I thought I wanted to do something a bit different. So Sterling, who runs, I'm not sure if you've heard of, probably can't mention it because of 12-step and anonymity, but can I don't know, but he started a really great meeting over there on Friday afternoons to do with fetish and kink.
Nice.
And so we're going to both run the workshop together, but his area is going to be fetish and kink and how to navigate that sort of landscape in recovery, and I wanted to do how to survive a breakup without relapsing in recovery. And the reason that I chose that one was because I came into recovery 20 years ago because of a relationship, a really challenging relationship, where I was the love addict. I don't know if you know much about love addiction and love avoidance and attachment theory, but I'll keep it really simple today. And so I was very obsessed with a guy that I was in a relationship with, didn't know how to manage my feelings and how to communicate in the relationship, and ultimately began to use more and more drugs to be able to cope with that situation, and then developed a full-blown, chemsex / crystal meth GHB addiction. And so that's what brought me into recovery. And when I was getting sober, what I discovered was what was really underneath my chemical addiction was a real difficulty being able to navigate relationships. So that was the first thing that happened for me. And then the second thing that happened was, once I was sober and decided I wanted to date again, frequently when I would get into these relationships, all the same issues would come up that had happened in that original relationship, where I would feel out of control, I would feel needy, I would feel like they don't love me as much as I love them, they're going to dump me at any moment, like massive insecurity. So I had put so much work into my recovery, I knew that there was no way that I could use. So I really had to learn very, very fast how not to return to using drugs when I was triggered or when I was in like a situation where the relationship wasn't working out. So that's a bit of a bit of background as to how this came about, presenting this workshop at Gay and Sober, but also why I'm so passionate about it. And I guess the third part of it that's kind of relevant is that I was sober for 16 years. And 3 years ago, I had a very short relapse, and it was basically based around this same stuff. It was I got very triggered about an ex on Instagram one day. It all happened incredibly quickly, and I hadn't really completed all my unfinished business with that relationship, and it led me to going to Berlin Pride, someone offering me, to go up to their hotel room at the Pride March. And after 16 years of sobriety, I said, yeah, that'll be a great idea. And obviously it all turned terribly wrong. And, I spent 4 months using again, which was just unbelievable. And so then I flew to Los Angeles and lived with my sponsor and just got clean straight away, just pre-pandemic. So I'm sort of 2.5, 3 years sober again now. But all of what I've told you is all about navigating breakups and navigating how to stay sober when you're in a relationship in recovery, which I find, especially because I'm a therapist and I work with a lot of clients, is one of the most challenging issues that comes up for people in recovery. And what I do a lot of now is teaching people the tools and supporting them through those difficult situations. And so we thought we'd turn this into a great big workshop at Gay and Sober to get everyone involved and to sort of empower everyone to know what to do in those situations, because the reality is it does happen to all of us.
That's amazing. First, I'm going to say I absolutely adore Sterling. But on this topic, like, one of the challenges that I think that I have, especially, you have people who will come in and obviously there's some people whose sex and relationship is not an issue connected to their recovery. But like you said, a lot of folks have this challenge. For me, I used to be really rigid in the beginning and say, well, no, you have to wait a year. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this. And I would always discourage. And I realized that we're human. And as much as I want to I want to try to protect them, but there is no real, I've gotten to the place just saying, you know what? Okay, so ideally you want to give yourself enough time to work on you, because when you bring somebody else in, you have to take them in consideration. But if you are willing to talk about the things that you need to talk about, to be honest, to try to put stuff out there, there's no right or wrong way. So the question I'm gonna ask you is like, when you're working with somebody, when you're working with sponsees or whatever, what is your suggestion about this idea of getting into relationships? Because is there a right or wrong time, or is there work that needs to be done before you get in, or is it just a matter of, you know what, shoot the dice, take
Yeah. No, that's a really good question because, you know, when people get sober, and I'm being a little general, but what I find a lot of the time is that when people get sober, the next thing on the agenda is, now I want to be in a relationship. Now I want to build a family.
after they get their teeth fixed.
Exactly. And you know, that totally makes sense, because people are going, oh, I've wasted a lot of time in addiction and I need to catch up, and you know, there's so many factors driving that. But I think, me personally, I definitely suggest people wait for about a year, because, you know, like, some people have been in active addiction for 10 years, some people have been in there for 3 years. But no matter what, you do have to stabilize, and you have to get a sense of your own identity. You have to start building a relationship with yourself, and you know, you have to build your self-esteem. Remember that story I told you at the beginning, when I got sober and I started dating and getting into these difficult situations, it became drastically clear to me that I had very little self-esteem. And you know, like, I would put that person I was attracted to on a pedestal, and I would put myself at the bottom of the pedestal, and you know, like, be going, love me, love me. And all the therapy that I did was about getting to the point of going, okay, I actually have to start knowing that I'm powerful and I'm valuable and I'm important and I'm intelligent and I have all these great qualities and I deserve to be in a relationship. I can't be continually being needy and, you know, sort of full of self-loathing. There's good stuff about me. So I think people in recovery do need at least 12 months to do that. I mean, there are exceptions to that rule, of course, because there are some people out there who I'm very envious of, who are just really great at relationships, you know, and they have gotten into those relationships after 6 months and done quite well. But I would say, for the majority, when people get into relationships too early, they haven't done that inner work. They haven't become stable and strong enough to be able to deal with it when it happens. And my quick example about that was, when I was in recovery, I was 18 months sober, which seems like quite a long time. I met a guy that I was really into, and it didn't work out. And oh my God, the emotional pain that I felt when he said, I don't want to go out with you anymore. Like, I hadn't smoked for 6 months. I went straight to the 7-Eleven and bought 3 packets of cigarettes and just smoked for the 20.
Just 3, huh?
I went to a sauna, you know, had sex with all these people. Like, I knew that I couldn't use drugs, but I pretty much did everything else, because the pain in me was excruciating. And I did get through that without using drugs, but then I was addicted to cigarettes and whatever. So even after 18 months, being rejected was so painful. These days, I have done a lot of work on myself, and I have, you know, done heaps of therapy and workshops and all this kind of stuff. So I generally deal with these situations heaps better, except for 3 years ago, but that was a different story.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I first got into recovery too, there was a lot of people who talked about, like, be concerned, like, finances and romances is what, like, takes a lot of people out of their recovery. At least that's what I had heard a lot of. Was there a question there?
Oh yeah. Anko, hi. Are you still in Massachusetts? Anyway, my sponsor made me wait, and I'm glad I did. I did not have any idea who I was and who I was going to become. Absolutely. I really feel like part of me was, you know, within my addiction, especially with crystal meth, I use crystal meth. I always said, and this is ironic, I said while I was using, that I feel like this is chipping away at my soul and who I am or whatever. So by the time I got sober, I didn't know. I had no idea. I was still kind of a big mess of everything. So trying to bring somebody into this mess wasn't, you know, it basically all I could muster was holding hostages.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, it's not. Yeah, it's not only about building self-esteem. It's actually about getting a sense of identity and who am I? Because, if a lot of people come out of addiction with kind of scattered values, and you have to know your values. Like, I mean, a really simple example is if you're suddenly like, you know what, I'm a vegan and I passionately believe in veganism, and then you meet a guy who's a bodybuilder and they just want to eat loads of beef and chicken all day long, you've got to sort of at least have a good sense of your value system and who are the kind of people you want to be dating and who do you want to be with.
Yeah, what were you gonna say?
Well, like when I first got into recovery, I was in a relationship, and I feel like that was part of like why I got into recovery too, because I was just failing at that so bad. And I think for me, it was like drugs and alcohol. Actually, drugs and alcohol let me do what I really wanted to do, because like I really needed to get out of that relationship. He was physically abusive. I was really just kind of in it because I had failed a marriage already and I didn't want to fail again. And, like there was just a lot kind of going on. And so, but yeah, I mean, it was, so it took me, I don't know, but like 3 months into recovery is when I finally left him, because I came to enough to where I could be like, this is not somebody worth even trying to the position that, it just became very clear all of a sudden that this is not going to work and this is not working right now.
And that's a really great example of what we're talking about, is that when you get sober, you get very clear and you realize, oh, this situation doesn't serve me anymore. And it sounds like you got enough sort of sense of self and self-esteem to say, I'm out of here.
Yeah, I think I do think it was something outside of me too, because there were plenty of times that I stayed. I mean, he punched me and I stayed in the relationship. You know what I mean? And for whatever reason that day, I remember we were like sitting at an old Chicago or whatever, and we were having a conversation, and he just said something, like he was wanting to hang out with this guy that he was sleeping with when we were separated. And I just said, this doesn't make me like I know it's like, I'm not going to tell you not to hang out with him, but like, it makes me feel a certain way. And he's like, well, I can't make him feel bad because da da da. And I was like, okay, my feelings and my experience is not a priority for you. And I was like, it was just like really clear, like, okay, this is done. Like, I'm not interested in being in a relationship with you anymore. But it took me a lot to get to that place, to actually be able to see it, but then to also actually like speak up for myself and say something about it. And that, to me, I do feel like it was some sort of like, it was something beyond me that was thankfully helping me out with that moment. It was just, like we do things that used to baffle us. Like that was one of those things where it was like, all of a sudden I'm just doing the opposite thing and I don't know why.
So we talked about like early recovery, some of the challenge that you might have. And obvious, some of the things are so obvious early recovery, but like with your situation after 16 years, we all get to that point after we've been sober for some time, where all of a sudden it seems like this is second nature, or like I have a little voice says, do I really have an issue? Do I have to? How do you maintain? How do you make sure? Because like, I almost feel like there's for me, what tends to happen is like, I'll be faced with a situation and then I get to kind of beef up my recovery or how I show up, but I don't know to do the work. Or maybe I do, I'm just not doing it. I don't know to do what I need to do to stir up to be ready. Like, that's the thing that's kind of tough for me.
That is also a great question, because as we stay in recovery longer, you're right, there are those of us that do become complacent. And I can tell you, with my example and my relapse was because I had stopped doing meetings. I was around a whole lot of other therapists in Australia who had been in recovery a long time, and they were no longer doing 12-step meetings and being part of the fellowship. And I thought, I'm working with addicts and alcoholics every day. I don't need to do 12-step anymore. I can stay sober without it. Which seems crazy, considering what it's like for us when we get sober and the hell that we come from and all the mess. To actually think I don't need this anymore. So I know for me it was like stopping doing meetings, not being part of the fellowship, not hearing all the stories anymore, and basically my cockiness and I guess grandiosity came back. And I guess because I've always done a lot of therapy in my recovery. I probably wasn't doing very much therapy at the time. And that's right. I was living in Thailand, so I had let a lot of things fall away. And I think this is an issue that does come up for a lot of people who've been long term in recovery, is that we do have the propensity to become complacent and to let things slide and to not keep doing the things we're doing. I had been consistently going to meetings and going to conventions and, you know, doing step work and all that for 13 years before I drifted away. And you know, what I learned from that is that I do need to stay connected. I need to stay doing meetings and doing therapy to just stay on top of it all. I mean, it's tough. Sometimes it's tough to go, do I still have to be doing all this work? But my experience now is relapsing and going through all that terrible experience. That's definitely not worth it. So I made a recommitment to the program. I think, you know, for other people in terms of relationships, and it doesn't just have to be romantic relationships, because as you know, we can fall out of friendships and all like the sort of relationships we have with parents and family members and work colleagues and stuff. Like, I believe recovery is all about relationships, no matter what they are, and we have to stay healthy in them. We have to know how to keep communicating, how to use nonviolent communication, how to have healthy boundaries, how to have the courage to set those boundaries, and how to disclose information safely, and how, when and how to be vulnerable. Like, there are so many aspects, and I believe it really serves us, the further we get into recovery, to continue to work on those issues. And this is why the workshop we're doing in New York, the way we've framed it up is there's going to be breakout groups where there's going to be older, cleaner members and younger members in the group answering specific questions. And what we're trying to do is skim off the top all the wisdom and intelligence of people in recovery over many years who've been through a relationship breakup, so that everyone's discussing, like, oh, you know, the worst part for me about a breakup is dealing with the feelings of self-loathing and I'm pathetic. And then you've got older, cleaner members saying, well, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been through that, and the tools and the things that I drew upon to get through it were A, B, and C. And so it's like just a real melting pot of learning for everyone.
Absolutely. It almost sounds like, you know, what we all connect with when somebody's sharing their experience is not so much their story, but their feelings. What were you feeling when that went down? I was thinking about something that you said. Oh, Ricky. Hi, Ricky. Ricky says, yeah, scared of getting into a relationship because I didn't want to relapse, waiting till I was sober, 10 years, sober, still single. Yeah, no, I think, you know, it's not that I'm against relationships or whatever. I just, you know, it has worked out beautifully for me that I get all that I need. I can go to the sex clubs or whatever and have sex here, and I can have my relationships with people. It would be nice to bring it together, but I think, you know, whatever it is, fear, who knows. But you said like a lot. There was something that I'm sitting in Anthony's seat, and I'm all scatterbrained now. No, I was thinking about it was about like relationships that are not, because we talked about before, that are not just romantic in nature. I think that what I like to talk to my sponsees about, and I first want to say, and we always say this, that, you know, there's so many different ways to approach recovery. 12-step is just the way that, like, I've chosen to do it. So with the relationship I have with my sponsees, like I like to tell, it's not just about not using and not drinking or whatever. It's about doing the work. It's about doing the work consistently. And what's inevitable, and what I heard in that, what's inevitable is that I'm changing, I'm growing. What I need changes and grows. And if the person that I'm with, like if I'm in a relationship or even family or even friends, and you know how we have these tribes of people that we have when we come in, you know, if we're not moving in the same direction, sometimes we have to get to the place where we can lovingly let people go. I like to say, I love you from across the street, but that's not an easy thing always. Yeah. That can cause issues too, because I don't want to be an asshole. And taking care of yourself is not you being an asshole, but taking care of yourself to someone who you loved or had in your life. So I'm thinking that is an area where I think for me, if I'm consistently doing the work, if I'm talking with my sponsee, if I'm relying on the love of my higher power, and if I'm constantly checking my temperature, then I have a chance. The last thing I'll say, because I've been yapping away, I would say I have these things that are in place that keep me from the next drink or drug. And if I pay attention, if I'm, like I said, meetings, work with sponsors, fellowship, connecting, taking a goddamn shower in the morning, things that keep me solid.
Right, right.
As I start to let them go, that's when I run the risk of like falling back into patterns, because nothing, it is only the work that I do that is keeping me from picking up.
Yeah.
It is not, God's grace is not enough sometimes, because sometimes, I have to, God will pull back and let me have whatever experiences I need to have so that I can grow.
Yeah. Well, some of my experiences with breakups and recovery, I think one of the things that's really different for me, a lot of my experience in getting recovery is getting to a place where I can see the truth and be okay with the truth and accept the truth. And so I think one of the things that's been great about breakups and recovery is that a truth can be revealed to me, and the fact that this relationship is not going to work any longer. And instead of like trying to fix it or like whatever, I can kind of like, yes, it hurts. Yes, it sucks. But then what I also do is I fall back into the program, like I do 90 meetings in 90 days, or like I just get that much closer into my program when I'm going through a breakup, just because I know that I can be like fairly sensitive. So I feel like breakups, I don't know, I've gotten better at breakups in recovery. I have not been in a lot of like long-term relationships in recovery, but I feel like it's I don't like, for me, there's a lot of the times it's like, the truth, but you just don't want to accept it, especially like in a relationship. I actually had a breakup last night. It was kind of a romantic thing. Like we met a couple of years ago, we used to work together, and then we stopped working together, and then he called me up and he wanted to hang out. And like after the first time we hung out, it felt like a date, but I didn't know it was a date. And so like there was kind of that weirdness like the whole time. And then I started transitioning. And so he called me yesterday and was like, hey, so I go into this because he's not in recovery or anything like that. He's like, but I'm going to ACA now. And next thing I know, he's doing a program call with me, which I did not know. And he's like, I just wanted to be really clear with you. He's like, when I first met you, I was really into you, and that was there, but that's when you were a guy, and you're not a guy anymore. You're trans. And I'm just not interested in you in that way. And I feel like I haven't been really clear with you about that. And I just want to make sure that that's that way. And so we can still be friends and that sort of thing. And it was one of those things that, yes, of course it's hard to hear. Like you never want to hear that, but also like I could understand, and I kind of already knew it. And I lacked the ability to be honest and clear with him too, because I was afraid to hear what he told me. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So, but yeah, so, I mean, but again, like I don't have to drink or use over it. I can feel shitty. I can talk about it on a podcast, I guess. What
was your first, what was your first inclination, or what did you do like after that? Like
I called another trans girl.
Okay. Got it.
And like, I called her and I was like, I wish I wasn't trans, like just for a minute. Because it was just like that rejection. It was because I was rejected because I was, not, what I mean? And it's like, and part of me knew that we weren't compatible in that way. And like, I'm not even really into him that, what I mean, that way. So it was like, and yet there was still kind of that response of like, oh, fuck, like, why couldn't I just be a dude? Yeah. Or like, why couldn't I, like whatever. And she's like, girl.
Even if it's done, interestingly enough, even if it's done in a really healthy way, in a loving way or whatever, it's hard not to see it as rejection.
I'm so grateful. It was like such a gift that he gave me. And I know that we're going to be okay. And we're going to be able to talk about it. But it was definitely something that, and I think that's what recovery does for me. Like I can take life as it comes, and life fucking hurts, and it's blows some blows.
So Stu, something that's really challenging, and I'll ask you, and I'll ask to both of you. Like I know folks for recovery and in recovery, they get into a relationship and they lose themselves. They lose themselves so much. It's like, and I've seen it happen with folks who were so into, who were like, I know there's in recovery, or like in 12 step, there's only the one program. And I always say either lean into it or there's a balance back and forth. But they lean, maybe that's the addiction. They lean in so heavily to the program, but then again, the relationship and they leave and go away. And I've experienced that with sponsees, and it's one of those areas where I'm just like, once I see it happening, I almost want to throw my hands up because I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do because it's like the power of whatever that is stronger than me.
Yeah, well, I think that in, that old phrase that they use is you start to make that person your higher power in a sense, and make that person your program. And I think that is one of the really important key things to remember is you have to keep balance. I usually in therapy draw a box that has 9 inner boxes in it, 3, 3, 3, and I put the person's name in the middle, and I say, like, it sounds like, because when they're in a world of pain and the person's left them and they're devastated and depressed, it sounds like, you put your name, Ben, in the middle, and you put his name, Steve, in every other box, and there was nothing else there. And so when Steve left, all your boxes were empty. Whereas if you had put Ben in the middle and you had put Jim here, yoga here, friend Sally here, friend Terry here, and filled every box with activities and friends and supports that you didn't abandon because you got in that relationship, you wouldn't be feeling the pain of this quite so much, because usually what people happens is they fall in love with Mr. X and they just, end up spending all their time and Netflix nights and, stuff with them, and they start to have less contact with the program and with their friends and everyone else, so that by the time 2 years passes and the breakup happens, they've kind of isolated themselves. And that is just the perfect storm for a relapse, feeling completely disconnected and isolated. Whereas if you remain in the program and connected, what happens is, and that's why I think I survived, 16 years of breakups, because I was always really into the program, and I continually would go into meetings and share about it and cry about it in the meetings and get that support, and people would say, "Are you okay?" And there was already that petri dish or that matrix of fellowship and support there, always had my back. So when I actually did have the relapse 3 years ago, I had none of that. I got triggered by whatever happened, and suddenly I went, okay, this is a good idea to go and do this. I didn't run it past my sponsor. I didn't run it past any peers. I didn't go to meetings and share about it. So yeah, I think it's a very important thing to remember, is keeping a full life with program and friends and family and everything else in it, so that if the rejection does happen or the breakup does happen, you're not adrift.
Yeah. One question I had for you that you might be able to answer, Stu, is like, in my experience, I felt like, I used to think that, like, if I just do a program or I'm in recovery to get away from drugs and alcohol, then like, that's all I need. Like, that will help me like continue to grow and be like a successful human being. Like, around 10 years of not drinking and using, I was still really horrible at relationships. And so like, I needed to go into another program or have another focus specifically on like relationships and codependency, and for me, like, I am also a codependent. So it's been really helpful for me to find another program, because I do feel like my codependency came before my addiction. So I think that's been like part of my process. So I guess I think part of it for me was that it came to understand was that I also was codependent on the program. Like a couple years ago, I had to like step away from the program kind of a little bit and like figure out a way to like take care of myself and not just, like escape into a meeting or escape into a relationship or escape into that. Sorry, I'm kind of like rambling, but I think it's been helpful for me to not just specifically like approach, I need to figure out how to do relationships differently. And whether that's therapy or another program, I couldn't just not stop drinking or using.
Yeah, I think if I heard you correctly, like and this should happen, I believe, for a lot of people as they get up to 10 years and longer in the program, is that you actually have a balance of program life and real life. Mm-hmm. And so that and I think that sort of organically happens for a lot of people, is you might do less meetings, or you might be a little bit less involved in some ways, but you still have a foundation of that, and you still have whatever level of participation you have. But in the real world, or the mainstream life, you actually have friends and colleagues, and you have non-fellowship friends, and you go and do activities that are not based around the fellowship and whatever. So that you have this great big life. Because another thing that I hear in therapy sessions sometimes is like, I'm really tired of the program and the fellowship just being all there is. And I think it's really important to develop, after a year or two, to start to explore outwards and to develop a very balanced life in both those areas, so that you actually feel a part of the world. And, because that's one of those other things where people go, oh, I can never use alcohol again. I can never use drugs again. Who am I in the world if I can't do that? But my experience is, like, there is so much on offer out there in the world without using drugs and alcohol. There's a massive, like this, I love that saying I heard in America, and I'll probably get it wrong. Something about you did one thing that excluded you from everything, and then all you had to do was give up that one thing and you got everything. And that was so true for me with drugs. Like, I thought giving up chemsex and all that stuff, there'd be a wasteland and nothing left for me. But when I gave it up, I joined a rugby team. We played rugby around the world. I started going and meeting, people in CMA and different fellowships in San Francisco, LA, Chicago, New York. Like, my life just exploded, and I couldn't see that when I was trying to get sober. But when you do, you have this great big life available to you, which can kind of stabilize and balance you when it comes to, a breakup or any difficulties in relationships.
The way that I approach it is, so the work that I'm doing with my sponsor, like in early recovery, obviously, like, I was really close to the program. I, did all the steps and the traditions and all those things that, and really kind of connected with the fellowship. And I think that the longer that I stay sober, rather than separate like this world, that world, I think everything is a part of my recovery. Going to the gym, building a healthier relationship with my family, being a better worker, all of those things are necessary. Like in my mind, it's like, I say I can't rest on yesterday's recovery, but it's about building that balanced life. It's about building that life that I don't want to lose, that goes far beyond just fellowship. Fortunately enough for me, I love a lot of people in the fellowships. Like, I can't San Francisco, it's like, you can't throw a rock without hitting somebody who is either in a therapy or in recovery, or need to be in recovery. So it's pretty fortunate.
True. We're not like out of time, but we're getting kind of toward the end there. And I wanted to give you a chance to kind of like share any sort of, like, I guess, words of wisdom or thoughts that you wanted to share in relation to maybe
any more words of wisdom, because you've been sharing.
Right. But that maybe you haven't said yet, that might help somebody kind of either, not relapse when it comes to going through a breakup, and, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, actually, there was something that you said earlier, Bonnie, that I wanted to comment on, which is related to this, and that is the way that we're presenting the workshop, that I'm doing my section of the workshop at Gay and Sober, is based on a model of grieving. Because when we come out of a relationship, we have to grieve, and grieving actually is something that plays a really big part in recovery. A lot of people don't realize when they get sober that they do need to grieve their old party life or the drugs that they used. And some people find that a bit weird to do that, but you have to grieve that space that's been left. And so we're in these breakout groups, we're basing the questions on Warden's 4 models, 4 stages of grieving, 3 stages of grieving. And the first one is accepting the reality of the loss. The second one is working through the pain of the breakup. And the third one is reinvesting energy in other pursuits and relationships. And this, I heard you say this, Bonnie, when you were talking about this person that didn't want to go out with you anymore because you transitioned. And what I basically heard you talk about the stages of grieving in that. You know, your initial response was that you were kind of hurt and that you were trying to accept the reality of the loss, and a lot of your thinking would have been around that. And that's typical of a breakup. We have to, you know, initially what I did and what a lot of people do is, oh my God, I've been rejected, or we've broken up, I need to go use drugs because I can't deal with this pain. That's the primal way to, and you know, not the best way to deal with it. But in recovery, we go, okay, this is painful, I need to accept the reality of the loss, whatever it takes, you know, go to therapy, cry about it, talk about it, lean on my peers, share about it from the floor. There's so many different strategies that you can use to accept the reality of the loss. Then the second one is working through the pain of the breakup. So that means, like the stuff that we've talked about in this session, like, who am I now in the world, building a sense of my identity again, building a relationship with myself, improving my self-esteem, hanging around with my friends because they're a beautiful mirror and reflection of who the great person that I am, stabilizing, basically, essentially, like stabilizing to make sure I don't relapse. And then as we move through that phase, it's about reinvesting in relationships in life. It's like turning away from the breakup and going, okay, that hurt, but I'm okay, I'm not using. What is there now in my life? There's other people, there's other men I can meet, there's other people I can meet. You know, there's other hobbies I can get involved in. There's so much more left in the world where I can get on with my life. So I love Warden's 4 stages of grieving being sort of like the foundation of what we're going to use in this workshop. And that's exactly what I heard you talking about, Bonnie, a minute ago. It was a great example of why we're going to use this model.
Yeah.
Right on.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So thank you, Stu. Do you have any way for people to get in touch with you? It's like we're as we wrap up, we usually like to let people know, and you can maybe he'll probably flash the conference again, the information about the conference.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, there's that. You know, I have a website, stufenton.com.au. I have another website, beyondaddiction.net.au. And I also have an Instagram account, which is Chemsex Recovery. So anyone can get in contact with me any of those 3 ways.
Perfect. And you can always right on. You can always reach me on the Instagram at LouisLou86. Still growing and developing. How about you?
And you can find me, Bonnie Violet, on at queerchaplain.org or on all the socials at Queer Chaplain.
Absolutely. And Stu, thank you so much for joining us, waking up so early.
No.
Go ahead. No, I wanted to remind everybody the Castro Country Club is a clean and sober gathering place for all people and a home for their queer recovery community. We're located in the heart of the Castro district of San Francisco, and we endeavor to be a space where all can seek wisdom, serenity, courage, and joy. And you can find more information at castrocountryclub.org/podcast on our new website.
And we love to hear from folks. We have a lot of ways that you can do that. One of the ways you can share with us and connect with us is through our speak pipe.
Yes.
So do pay attention to that. We would love to get messages. Basically, you go to the link in the description and then you can leave like a voicemail, and then it's a voicemail that we can get that could be encouragement, or maybe it's a question or a topic that we could then play on our next episode. So we love all the interaction we can get from y'all.
Yes, and you can email us at podcast@countryclub.org.
And you can join us each week as we go live from the Castro Country Club on Facebook and YouTube at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah, and catch us anywhere. Catch us YouTube also at the CCC and anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. Also, just a reminder, we are not ambassadors or kings and queens or representatives of any program. We simply just share what is closest to our hearts and we're able.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I think that's all we have. Yeah,
that's all we have.
All right.
Thank you again,
so
Stu.
Thanks, Stu. And
Thank you. Lovely to meet you. Okay. Bye-bye now.